Welcome back to the Book Nook podcast. Today, we're going deep on Animal Farm by George Orwell. Yeah, it's one of those books that you just, it stays with you. And before we jump in, if you want to grab a copy to follow along, there's a link in the description.
It's amazing how Animal Farm can be like a simple story, but also like this deep dive into power, revolutions and just what people are like.
Exactly. It's why it's still so popular today.
Yeah.
So for anyone who needs a refresher on Animal Farm or hasn't read it, it's about a group of animals who get rid of the farmer, Mr. Jones, to make a perfect society. But things don't really work out, do they?
Yeah, well, at first there's all this hope, right? The animals are all inspired by Old Major and his dream of a farm run by animals. They really think they're making a better world. They set up the 7 commandments of animalism, and the big one is, all animals are equal.
Well, animals are equal. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
So where does it all go wrong?
Well, it starts to fall apart almost right away. The pigs, they're supposed to be the smartest ones, right? They start taking control. Napoleon and Snowball are the 2 main pigs, but they disagree on what to do with the farm.
Yeah. Napoleon and Snowball. That's where Orwell gets into the history part, right? He's talking about the Russian Revolution.
Exactly. Napoleon is like Stalin, all sneaky and ruthless, and Snowball is like Trotsky, all idealistic with his plans to modernize. Just like in Russia, they fight for power.
And Napoleon wins. Just like Stalin. He takes all the power, gets rid of his enemies like Snowball, and makes a super controlling government kind of scary.
What's crazy is how Orwell uses these simple animal characters to talk about complicated people and events, like the Battle of the Cowshed, when the animals fight off the humans who want the farm back. That's just like when other countries tried to stop the Russian Revolution.
And then there's the windmill. It's supposed to be this big sign of progress, but it's really like Stalin's 5-year plans. Those were these huge industrial projects that were really hard on people.
And just like those plans, the windmill keeps having problems. And in the end, it just helps the pigs, not everyone else.
It's fascinating, kind of scary how much it's like history. It shows you how power works, whether it's people or animals in charge.
One of the creepiest characters is Squealer. He's like Napoleon's propaganda machine, twisting facts and changing history to make the pigs look good even when they're being really mean.
He's like a spin doctor, right? He even changes the 7 commandments. It ends up being all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Exactly. He messes with words and information. And the sad thing is, it works. The other animals, especially the sheep, they just believe his lies. It makes you think about how strong propaganda is and how easy it is to trick people who don't think for themselves.
Totally. And hey, if you're liking this deep dive into Animal Farm, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It really helps others find the podcast and join these cool discussions.
That Squealer guy, he reminds me of Boxer the workhorse. He just believes everything, keeps saying, I will work harder.
Yeah, Boxer's so sad. He works so hard, but the system he's trying to help ends up betraying him. He's like a symbol of the working class, used and then tossed aside when they're not useful anymore.
And then there's Benjamin the donkey.
Yeah.
He's cynical. He sees through the pig's lies, but he doesn't say anything. I think he's like the part of us that knows something's wrong but doesn't feel like we can do anything about it. Him not speaking up makes you think about, like, what are we responsible for, and when do we become part of the problem by not doing anything?
Yeah, Benjamin's silence always gets to me. It makes you wonder if it's better to speak up even if no one's listening, or to just stay quiet and watch everything happen.
It's a tough choice a lot of people face when they see power and bad things happening. Animal Farm doesn't give you easy answers, but it definitely makes you think.
It really does. And all this talk about propaganda and manipulation, it feels super relevant today. There's so much fake news and spin online and in the news. It's like Squealer's alive and well in the digital age.
That's a great point. We're drowning in information these days, and it's more important than ever to think critically, to question what we see and hear, and to make up our own minds based on facts and logic. Like Benjamin, we have a choice: stay quiet or speak up against what's wrong.
Orwell really nailed it with Animal Farm, didn't he? It was written like 75 years ago, but it feels just as important today.
Yeah, it does. Power, corruption, propaganda. They're all still happening all over the world.
And that's why it's good to reread these classic books to see how they connect to our lives now and make us think differently. What I find really creepy is how the pigs change history. It's like gaslighting a whole farm.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just in stories. We see it in real life, too. People trying to erase or change the past to fit their agenda. It reminds us to pay attention to how stories are being told and to always look for the truth.
So what's the lesson here? What can we as readers in the 21st century learn from Animal Farm?
I think the most important thing is to think for ourselves. The animals on the farm, except for a few, like Benjamin, They're easily tricked by propaganda and emotional stuff. They don't question what they're told, and they trust the leaders blindly. We have to learn from their mistakes. We have to be able to think critically, question authority, and challenge the way things are.
That's so important. We can't just accept information. We have to think about it, especially today.
And that's why Animal Farm is still so relevant, even after all these years. It's a wake-up call. It reminds us to never take our freedom for granted and to always watch out for people who want to use us, whether they look like us or walk on four legs.
Absolutely. It's a book everyone should read at least once, no matter who you are or where you come from. And if you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? Get a copy using the link in the description and join the conversation.
It's a conversation that's more important now than ever with all the misinformation and division in the world. The lessons in Animal Farm are like a guide for us to navigate these crazy times.
Well said. And before we get into some of the specific themes and characters, I want to thank our listeners. If you're enjoying the Book Nook podcast, please leave us a rating and review. It helps more book lovers find the show and keeps the conversation going.
It's crazy how easily those animals fall for the pig's tricks.
Yeah, like you'd think they'd figure it out, especially when the pigs start walking around on two legs and changing the rules whenever they feel like it.
Right, but that's how propaganda works. It gets you in your gut, your fears, your hopes. And if you control the story, if you control what people know, you can control what they think.
That's what's so scary about Squealer. He's not just talking, he's like a puppet master. He knows how powerful words are, and he uses them to twist the truth, change history, and basically brainwash everyone else.
Oh, and don't forget the sheep. They just echo whatever Squealer tells them. It's kind of creepy how easily people can get swept up in groupthink, even when it's obvious that things are going totally off the rails.
You said before that Animal Farm is like a warning. What lessons do you think Orwell was trying to teach us about power and how it can make people go bad?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that power, any kind of power, can turn even good intentions sour. The pigs started out wanting good things right. They really wanted to make a fair world for all animals. But the more power they got, the more their good ideas faded away. And they just became greedy and ambitious and power-hungry.
And it's not just the pigs, right? The other animals play a part in their own oppression, too. They don't ask questions, they don't hold the pigs accountable, and they end up becoming part of the system that's hurting them.
Exactly. It shows how important it is to be an active citizen, to know what's going on, to be involved, and to speak up when you see injustice. The animals on the farm, most of them anyway, they just accept what the pigs tell them. They don't think for themselves. They don't question anything. And they end up paying the price for not caring.
So you're saying Animal Farm isn't really about animals on a farm. It's about us, about human nature and how dangerous power can be, and how we all have a responsibility to protect our freedom.
Exactly. And that's what makes this book so timeless. It's like a mirror showing us how complicated power and revolutions are, and just how messed up people can be.
It's powerful stuff, and it feels super relevant to what's happening in the world today. We see the same things happening in politics and social movements, even in our own relationships.
Absolutely. Animal Farm is like a reminder to stay aware, to never assume we're free, and to always be careful of people who try to manipulate and control us.
It's a book that sticks with you and makes you think long after you've finished reading it.
Oh.
And speaking of thinking, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Animal Farm, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. It helps more people find the Book Nook podcast and join us in exploring these amazing books.
One thing I find really interesting about Animal Farm is how it uses satire to show how hypocritical and ridiculous totalitarian regimes are.
Oh yeah, totally. The way Orwell shows the pigs slowly becoming just like the humans they kicked out.
Yeah.
It's funny and scary at the same time. They start walking on two legs, wearing clothes, drinking whiskey, even playing cards with the farmers next door.
It's like the ultimate irony, right? The revolution was supposed to free the animals, but it ends up creating the same system of oppression they were fighting against. And it happens so gradually that they don't even realize it until it's too late.
It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Yeah.
You know it's going to happen, but you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And that ending with the animals looking through the window and not being able to tell the difference between the pigs and the humans. It's chilling.
It's a harsh reminder that power makes people corrupt, and that those who want power often become the very thing they say they hate.
Thinking about those last scenes, it makes me wonder if Orwell is saying that revolutions are pointless, that trying to change the system will always just lead to another form of tyranny.
That's a really good question, and I think Animal Farm wants us to think about that. It doesn't give easy answers, but it makes us face the tough stuff about power and revolution, and how people can be both good and evil.
It really makes you think. One thing that's interesting is how people see the book in different ways. Some people think it's just about how bad Soviet communism was, but others see it as about how dangerous any kind of dictatorship is.
Right, that's what makes Animal Farm so great. You can read it on different levels, like a history lesson, a political joke, or just a story about people, and they all have something to teach us.
It makes you realize that fighting for freedom and equality never really ends. Even when you have a revolution like the animals did in Animal Farm, there's always a chance things will go back to how they were, or even worse.
Yeah, and that's why we got to stay alert, to spot the signs of tyranny and fight back whenever someone tries to take away our freedom. Animal Farm is like a reminder that history can repeat itself if we're not careful.
For sure. When I first read Animal Farm, I was really drawn to Benjamin, the cynical donkey. He's the only one who really seems to get what's happening, but he just keeps his mouth shut.
Benjamin is a weird one, right? He's skeptical, like he doesn't believe anything. And maybe he feels like nothing he can do will matter. He sees the pigs tricking everyone, but he also seems to think that revolution is pointless. Like, things will always end up bad no matter what.
It's like he's given up hope. But him staying quiet makes us think too, doesn't it? Is it better to say something, even if it feels like it won't change anything, or just stay quiet and protect yourself?
That's a tough one. There's no right answer. But Animal Farm kind of suggests that staying silent makes you part of the problem. When we see bad things happening and don't do anything, we're basically letting it continue.
So what can we do to not be like that? How can we avoid ending up like those animals in Animal Farm, just blindly believing whatever the leaders say?
I think the most important thing is to learn how to think for ourselves. We need to question everything, to not just accept what we're told, and to look deeper for the truth.
And that's where education comes in.
Right.
It's not just about remembering facts. It's about learning how to think, how to analyze information, and how to make up our own minds.
Exactly. Education gives us the power to resist being manipulated.
Wow.
It helps us see the world more clearly, understand how power works, and make choices about how we want to live.
So in a way, Animal Farm is a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to protect our freedom and make the world a fairer place.
Absolutely. It reminds us that freedom isn't free. We have to constantly fight for it and protect it. And that starts with being informed, being involved, and speaking up against injustice, no matter how small it seems.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Animal Farm. We hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. And remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Share your thoughts, your favorite quotes, anything this book made you think about in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast for more deep dives into the world of literature. We've got some awesome episodes coming up covering everything from classics to new releases, so stay tuned. And if you like this episode, please leave us a rating and review. It helps other book lovers find the show. Thanks for listening to the Book Nook podcast, and don't forget to grab your copy of Animal Farm using the link in the description.